Broncos training camp is right around the corner, and I want to hear from the best viewers in the world. Have you ever been to a training camp practice before? Let me know in the comment section, yes or no. If you've gone before, what year did you go? And if you have not gone, are you planning to go sometime in the near future? What's going on, everyone? Welcome into another edition of the Broncos Breakdown. Coming up on today's show, we're going to get a KJ Hamler injury update for you guys. Plus, we're going to discuss the idea of the Broncos potentially trading for Zack Martin as the Pro Bowl All-Pro guard, might be entering a holdout with the Dallas Cowboys. And then we're going to look at Bleacher Report's win projection total for all 32 teams, see where they had the Broncos in this upcoming season. But let's get right into it with this from Mike Kliss in a recent article of his in which he shared a bit of a nugget on KJ Hamler. Mims and veteran KJ Hamler, who is also expected to be recovered from his torn pec by the start of camp, should have a strong competition. This is awesome to see. We have talked about KJ Hamler before on the show, and it's a bit of a difficult conversation to have because on one side, we should all be pulling for KJ Hamler because of the story, right? Because of the hurdles he has had to overcome, the injuries he has sustained early in his NFL career. But on the other hand, there is an acknowledgement of this is the NFL. And at some point, the lack of availability will get in the way of you having a guaranteed roster spot. Because KJ Hamler has had a brutal injury history. Early in his NFL career, he missed the first game, week 1, due to a hamstring injury. Then he suffered a concussion later that season. And then early in 2021, he had the torn ACL and hip injury. He might have come back a week or two early from that to start last season, was on and off early in the season. Then he suffered another hamstring strain. And then this past March off-season workouts, he has a torn pec, and he gets surgery for that. But I really want to remind everyone the gruesome injury that he suffered when he tore his ACL early last season, or 2 seasons ago at this point, 2021, was not your run-of-the-mill ACL tear, right? It was a dislocated hip on the left side. He said he had numb legs for 2 to 3 days. His new ACL is from his patella in his right knee. He had to get surgery on both knees to get his left ACL repaired. He was in the hospital in bed for 14 days, and he lost 40 pounds laying in bed for 2 weeks. Again, this is not a standard routine ACL tear where it's, they're never quick and easy, but this day and age for, medical science, we have come a long way compared to the Stone Age. But this was a very complex and very gruesome and lengthy return. And so it sucks to see him the very next offseason tear his pec and move himself back in terms of where he is in the pecking order and being someone that this team can rely on and account for as a valued or productive member for this team in 2023. So I have a question for everyone, and I want to see what kind of responses we get. Pick a player to restart their career, but injuries are off this time, right? Who is someone that you'll always wonder what could have been if they just did not get hurt? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, taking a deeper look at this wide receiver room, KJ Hamler is not a shoo-in to make this 53-man roster. Of course, the injuries pile on, but it's a very competitive end of this wide receiver room because you have players like Jalen Virgil and Marquez Callaway, Kendall Hinton, Brandon Johnson. There are a lot of players. Just for a moment here, Judy, Sutton, Patrick, Mims, Hamler, Callaway, Hinton, Jalen Virgil, Montrell Washington, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Brandon Johnson, all have been on an active 53-man roster before. So for good reason, you can make arguments for all of these guys. And I think you're going to have one heck of a training camp battle, right? We've got 5 names on screen, and I realize I didn't even include Montrell Washington because you can make good arguments for all of these guys. Marquez Callaway was brought over in free agency. He was with Sean Payton in New Orleans. I have to envision that Payton signed him with a role in mind. So I think he's going to make this 53-man roster. But KJ Hamler, Jalen Virgil, Brandon Johnson, Kendall Hinton, all players who were on the 53-man roster last year and showed good plays, right? There's none of these guys here are just bums or something like that after a game or two, oh, never again. So I think you can make a good case for all these players having a shot, having a crack at making the 53-man roster. Now, when it comes to Broncos training camp breakdowns and all that good stuff, make sure you subscribe because we're going to get you guys the best in-depth breakdown, analysis, all that good stuff, all camp long, preseason long. You don't want to miss a thing, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single training camp video from us here at the Broncos Breakdown. Switching gears, let's talk about a pretty wacky idea, but hey, it's July. That's what NFL fans do. Adam Schefter tweeted out this morning that Cowboys six-time All-Pro guard and team captain Zack Martin is considering not reporting to training camp due to his unhappiness with his current and team's lack of interest in his current contract and the team's lack of interest in restructuring it. He also went on to say Martin believes he is woefully underpaid relative to the market. Martin is scheduled to make about $7 million less this season than the NFL's top paid guards. So we are going to look at the possibility of Denver maybe swooping in and trading for someone like Zack Martin. I will preface with this is, in my opinion, a move that would be a blindside move. I don't think anyone is sitting in their couch right now thinking Denver's going to get Zack Martin, but it could happen because crazier things have happened. And a lot of times when we get these contract holdouts, they tend to go one of two ways. Either it is quickly fixed and the team steps in and offers more money, or 48 hours later, a trade request is had. So don't be shocked if tomorrow when you're watching this video, Zack Martin has already requested a trade. I think that would be, further down the less believable scale, but we are now getting in that direction where Zack Martin wants to be paid more. He believes he's woefully underpaid. If the Cowboys don't take out their wallets, the next step would be a holdout and then a trade request. And I'm sure Zack Martin doesn't want to get traded, but the question is, does he want to play with Dallas or does he want to get paid more? And if those two don't connect, a trade might be his only option. Now, it should go without saying that Zack Martin is one of the best guards in football, if not the best. I mean, he is 1, 2, or 3 every single season. There is a elite tier of guards. I think it's Chris Lindstrom, Zack Martin, Joel Bitonio, and Quentin Nelson. And you can kind of arrange them however you want in any given season. But this is what Zack Martin is talking about. When you look at the highest paid guards in football, Zack Martin, and we'll throw it on screen for you guys, is nowhere near the top 5. I mean, he's got $14 million, and I guess he's $2 million off from Joel Bitonio and Joe Thuney. But he is nearly $7 million off from Chris Lindstrom at number 1, Quentin Nelson at number 2 for $20 million on average. So I want to say this is probably too rich for the Broncos to get done, but we learned this offseason that the Walton Penner ownership group has given the green light and has written a lot of blank checks. And if George and Sean Payton go to ownership and go, hey, this is a high-level move. I mean, this is something that we might have to get your approval on because you'd be signing a very big check. I'm sure if Walton Penner, if George and Sean Payton go to Walton Penner and say, this is also a move we believe will be instrumental in making this team successful in 2023, then they might greenlight it. But they also might say, you know what? No, we already signed Ben Powers to a big contract in free agency. You wanted a new guard. You wanted to replace Dalton Reisner. We got your replacement. But at the same time, that might be the thing that a lot of owners say, but it might not be a thing that the richest owners in NFL history ever say. And that is where we might see the Walton Penners allow Denver and this ownership to pursue that type of deal. Looking at the Broncos offensive line depth chart, it's solid. Ben Powers, Mike McGlinchey come over to make vastly big improvements. But who are we kidding? Like, if you could add Zack Martin to this offensive line, it would go from being, I think, a middle-of-the-pack offensive line, maybe like a, not quite top 10, but between that 10 and 16 range in the NFL, to being without a doubt a top 10 offensive line. Because if you were to add Zack Martin, here's what I think you would do. You would move Quinn Miners over to center. So long, Cushenberry. Zack Martin, who's been a right guard his entire NFL career, would stay at that position. And all of a sudden, you go from last year's atrocious offensive line to Garrett Bowles, a potential Pro Bowl caliber type tackle when he's at his best, right? Ben Powers, another guy who at his best could be a Pro Bowl type guard. Quinn Miners, who is one of the quickly rising interior offensive linemen in the NFL. Zack Martin, a 6-time All-Pro right guard. And then Mike McGlinchey, who has that All-Pro type potential in him. I mean, this would be a dramatic turnaround. And again, Denver's already spent a lot of money between Powers and McGlinchey, but they have these Saudis of the NFL at ownership. So if the Walton Penner Group says, hey, if you think that Zack Martin would be an absolute game changer for us, don't worry about money. We will greenlight the money. The money side is taken care of. Now, then it comes down to compensation, and that's a whole different conversation, and I don't know what Zack Martin goes for. Maybe it's a first, maybe it's a third. I'm not quite sure, but you got to admit, this would be an incredible offensive line for Russell Wilson to have, and if the Walton Penners are sitting there thinking, we did not just spend almost $5 billion on an NFL team to have 2 straight losing seasons, if Zack Martin's going to come in here and he's going to turn this offensive line right around without questions being asked, and Russell Wilson is going to look like the quarterback we gave up a lot for and gave a huge extension to, I don't think this would be ruled out of the conversation for the Broncos. But grade their offensive line without Zack Martin. As it is right now, what grade are you giving it? It's not an A. I got to see it play out first. I mean, the Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey additions were solid, but I do think it's a good point to remember, they are not all pro caliber players, right? They're very good players, and I'm very excited about them, and I don't want to water down those moves, but I do want to say, they're not going to make them an A offensive line right off the bat. I think this is a B offensive line, and with Zack Martin, it would absolutely be an A. Now, next up on the show, Bleacher Report came out with their win total projections for all 32 NFL teams, so we are going to see who or how many wins they had the Broncos getting. But before we do, it's not too late to snag your very own Broncos retro t-shirt. The sale continues, but don't wait too much longer because they are going to start running out of sizes. So go to chatsports.com/DEN retro. I put that link in the comments and the description of today's video. Now let's begin to run through Bleacher Report's win projection. So I got all 32 teams here in case you're curious about everyone else. They had the Bills and the Dolphins over their expected win total from Vegas. Patriots under, Jets under. I kind of agree with all that. The Ravens over. The AFC North is going to be a gauntlet this year. The Bengals over, the Browns over, and the Steelers under. All that checks out to me. For the rest of the AFC, look what they did to the AFC South for a moment. Texans under 6.5. Colts under 6.5. Even the Jags under 9.5. And the Titans under 7.5. The fact that Bleacher Report thinks every single team in the AFC South is going to suck, just like how we thought every single team in the AFC West was going to be awesome last year, I am now probably going to be a big buyer in the AFC South because you got to fade Bleacher Report. But there's the Broncos. Over 8.5 wins with 9. Kansas City over. The Raiders under. I concur. Chargers under. That is an interesting one. That would definitely get Brandon Staley fired. But I'm going to agree with Bleacher Report. I've got Denver going 9-8 this season. They were a 5-win team last year. They add Sean Payton. And as dramatic as it sounds, I think Sean Payton's good for 4 wins. So 4 wins added on from what they did last year gets you to 9-8. Miami made the playoffs last year with 9-8. So I wouldn't rule out playoffs in year 1 with Sean Payton if they do go 9-8. But I think that is very much in play for the Broncos this season. To just round it out, the NFC side of things here, Dallas over 9.5 wins, Giants under 7.5. I'm going to go under for the Eagles. Producer Chipper is an Eagles guy. He is shaking his head at me right now, but I don't know. I just don't think it's going to happen back-to-back years. Commanders over. No, the Commanders are going to suck this year. Bears under. I kind of like the over. I think Chicago could get to 8 wins. Detroit over 9.5. I just can't. I refuse to accept that the Lions could be good. It's just too hard for my brain to compute. The Packers over. No, the Packers are going to suck. I think the Vikings will be better than what people are giving them credit for. The rest of the NFC looks like this. The Falcons under 8.5. The Panthers, that many wins in year one for Bryce Young. I'll pass. Saints over 6.5 with 9. The Bucks, they go under 6.5. Cardinals go under. Yeah, that sounds right. Rams, this will be an interesting one because they're not far removed from winning a Super Bowl and still having the same core, right? Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Aaron Donald. So maybe they'll be better than people expect. The 49ers over and by a mile. That's an interesting one. And the Seahawks over 8.5 wins. So they set the line for Denver at 8.5. Are you taking the over or are you taking the under? I'm going with the over. Life's too short to live in the unders club, but I think this team can get to 9-8. So pencil me down for over. To wrap up the show, time for our summer hot takes here. It is a warm 87 degrees in Denver today. So that gets us into that hot sand take where, when you walk out of the water and you got to run to your beach towel, that kind of a hot sand level. Yeah, so that's our take gauge for today. And my hot sand take is that Russell Wilson does not finish in the top 5 for most sacked quarterbacks in 2023. Just sort of building off of the offensive line conversation we had in today's show. Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey come over. Quinn Miners is one of the fastest rising guards in football. I could not buy more of his stock. Hopefully a bounce-back season for Garrett Bowles, and a very rare instance where Russell Wilson does not finish towards the top of the leaderboard in sacks. So that's my hot sand take. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys later.